this is such an interesting picture. Oh, it takes me back. I can remember walking on this dike so many times in these beautiful meadows. Just beautiful.
Can you remember which way it's looking, or just what we're doing here?
It seems to me that, okay, this was a main road, actually, because we would have to walk from the dike down past the school and then way on down to the to Fisherman's.
So the school Cove is on the other side. So
yeah.
we're looking toward Fisherman's Cove then. We're
a long way from it, but
yeah.
This is the main road because to Fisherman's Cove it crosses over. There's another road goes out. Decided we would go to Cape Scott, and we arrived at Fisherman's Cove, and that's something else because first of all you arrive at Shusharty Bay up on the Union steamship, which was the Venture. It was called the Venture, and you had to get in this little gas boat run by the fellow who owned the logging sort of a boarding house at Shusharty Bay, and his name was Skinner, and he would bring the goods and the mail to this little sheltered cove, which is called Fisherman's Cove. And this is the cove in which we landed. So in order to get on land, we had to get out of the little gas boat and then into a large rowboat to shore. And this is really something for people who are coming from a place like Wales. It wasn't easy.
What was at Fisherman's Bay? There was
the general store and the post office.
Just one building?
Yeah, that's right.
Not really anything else then?
No. There were some homes around it. Now, the missionary lived, we called it Sunset Beach at that time. Sunset Beach. It's now Nissen Bight.
Yes. Well, the whole area is Nissen Bight.
But that's the one we call it.
Yeah, Nissen Bight.
Yeah.
Fisherman Bay.
This in here. Yeah. Okay, this little cove, and this lovely beach we used to call Sunset Beach.
Sunset Beach.
And quite a few people lived on this beach.
And do you remember who ran the store?
The last people who ran it were the Vicks and the Annie Vick and little Fred Vick. And their dad
ran the store.
I can't remember her mother, but it was Vicks when I used to go down for the mail. And that's where, and they had it was not too many things that you could buy there, but flour and sugar, the staples, That is the most interesting spot, up there at Sand Neck.
What was it like there? It's a very curious place to even think about.
Well, it is indeed, because what amazed me was how many beautiful wild strawberries grew around the sand dunes. And we were visiting, let's see, what were their names now? Mr. Weber. And he lived up there. And of course, Clara's grandfather lived around that area too.
So we the name of the grandfather?
Yeah, Nels.
Is this Nels
Jensen?
Nels Jensen.
Nels
yes.
Jensen, that's right. But these are lovely pictures. Oh, isn't this a beautiful picture of the sand dunes?
Yes. They're really taking over by that time.
Well, they've taken over now, I can tell you.
Yes.
But it is amazing how well things grew up there in that sandy soil. I mean, we had a beautiful garden also, but it used to amaze me as a kid. The potatoes, I can remember one especially was the early rose, and I thought, what a pretty looking potato. It was a lovely potato, it intrigued me that it grew so well in that sandy soil. But I see the clover is growing nicely too.
Boy, it sure is. Do you remember anything about the dances?
I certainly do. First of all, it was so lovely to have these men who could play the fiddle, and most of the dances were Danish, and it was just lovely because they taught all the kids. All of us would go, and we would learn the dances, and we'd stay up as long as we dared until we got too tired. And then they'd put us on the large, long tables to sleep. But usually I wasn't one that wanted so much sleep, so I was having fun dancing, doing these Danish dances, and listening to the fiddle playing. But anyway, it was a real event, because it was so seldom that a group like this would get together. And people would come to the all-night dances from St. Joseph and Holbrook, and bring their lanterns, and they would dance until dawn, or sometimes we'd start going home just before dark. But it was so thrilling to walk along the road with your lantern. But it was a lovely, friendly get-together.
Well, this is, I believe, if we turn over, this is a meeting house.
Yes, this was the school.
The community hall, 1914.
That's right.
So that's a school also.
Yeah, that's where the school was. The school was in one big room, and then the big hall where we danced was in here, and where the fair was held. The exhibits.
Yeah. Now, can we identify them perhaps by rows, or so that the tape will then tell me who's who? So you said that one of these girls.
Okay, this one in the first row. This one, that's my sister Miriam. That one.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, that's Mrs. Gibbs.
Mrs. Gibbs.
Yes. Now, and right peeking through beside her is my mother.
Elizabeth. Oh, just peeking around her.
Yeah, that's Elizabeth Williams.
Williams. Well, which one is you?
Okay, right there. So the same dress as my sister?
Oh, yes. Okay. Long hair.
Yeah, and we had it in curls, too. With these beautiful meadows, it was just amazing how much lovely grass came from these meadows. And I'm not too sure who owned the meadows, but I guess the lucky people who had cows and horses would collect the hay. But it was a community effort, and everybody helped during the haymaking. And it was just such a lovely thing to do in the summer, to see the big horse carts. Well, you've got a picture of one, but I don't know that particular picture. But in my mind's eye, I can see what I saw then: the horses and the hay wagons, and then of course going bare feet. Did you used to go bare feet? You really have to be really tough to go barefoot after the hay had been cut. And however, with all that stubble, I don't know how we made out. I can remember it used to hurt, but it was always seemed to be such sunny days during the haymaking time, and there was always such a nice, warm feeling of friendship, which, it sort of permeated everybody. It seemed it was lovely, that community effort, and in a place like that, you do have to help each other out, don't you? But one of the nice things I think about having the Kings nearby, and one of my lovely recollections, is helping the girls. They did have a young brother, but he was almost too young to go with us. But to bring the cows home at night in the evening, and we'd have to go through the woods and then into the meadows where they had been grazing all day. And there's nothing more beautiful to my ears than in the evening, and the twilight, bringing home the cows to be milked, and following the cow trails. It was a very special experience to us. We loved it. However, it was very sad. A very young man who was a bachelor, and he was living up there at the lagoon. And one day he accidentally shot himself while hunting. And our dad, John Christmas Williams, was active, as I say, with the Red Cross Brigade, as they called it in Wales. And this poor fellow bled to death, and nothing could save him, although my dad did what he could with the help of my uncle William Gardner, who also belonged to the Red Cross Brigade. It's so sad that this young man bled to death, even though my dad did all he could. And this reminds me about the cemetery that we passed when we moved from Becker's and we were building our cabin. We passed the cemetery. And it's so strange, but my sister and I felt very sad to think that this young man had died and was buried in this cemetery. And this older man who we had loved had died. And there were, well, not too many graves in this cemetery, but I guess we were so sentimental. But as we passed the cemetery on our way home, nearly every day during the spring and summer when the wildflowers were out, we would always stop and place flowers on the graves, especially on that young man's grave and Mr. Lovell's. It was a real joy. It was a special something that we thought we were doing for these dear souls who had died. It was such a strange thing when you think about it, but you know, we just thought we just had to put these flowers on these little graves with just marked with a cross, no name, just a cross. We had been to this home, but around this home was a beautiful garden and beautiful trees that Christensen had planted many years ago. A tomb in there saying that a 12-year-old boy, and evidently this man was a bachelor, but he loved he had been one of the original school teachers, by the way, that Christensen, and he loved children, and he went out somewhere to, I don't know, one of the fishing villages, and he brought back 3 boys, and he adopted 3 boys, and one of the boys, this 12-year-old William, his name was making him something, and he stepped on a rusty nail, and he had blood poisoning. And it's pink marble. It's a lovely tombstone. And just the words on it. And it just shows his heartache losing that 12-year-old boy. To this day, I can still hear them crying in my mind, the cougars.
The cougars.
Oh, my goodness, yes. In the night, during the night. Very eerie, scary sound, I can tell you. But it was very frightening, though, in the night to hear the cougars cry. And I know that at one point we had a portion of a pig hanging up in a shed down at the bottom of the garden. My mother was quite frightened of being alone, and I don't know how come I was so brave, I'm sure. But anyway, so we went down, and sure enough, the cougar had beat us to it. It had taken that portion of the pig. So we, after that, we were always wondering about the cougars because they were so near to us, and hearing them because they do. Have you heard them? Have you heard them cry?
No, I haven't. No.
You see, and when we first went up there were wolves up there too. And of course, lots of bears. But I heard the cougars, but I didn't actually see one, luckily, or a bear from behind my back. But it was quite the life.